Okay, in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to answer these questions that we brought up in the previous video when looking just at a graph of a quadratic. So each one of these is the graph of a quadratic function. Each one has that look, the U shape. We call it a parabola, and we're going to answer all these questions about given just the information in these graphs. Okay. A couple pieces of information. First, we're going to call this graph, this first one, we're going to call this graph A. This one we're going to call graph B, and this one we're going to call graph C. Please note that in each one of these, you can see this is the x-axis, and this vertical axis, that's the y-axis. So in each one, we've got the x-axis and the y-axis, and you can see that the numbers are labeled, okay? X-axis and the y-axis, okay? So let's start with graph A. So the first thing says, what is the vertex, which is the coordinate HK, okay? And like I said previously, the vertex is just simply, it's the point where the graph turns around. It will either be the top of the graph or the bottom of the graph, depending on whether the graph opens up or down, okay? And so the vertex is this point right here. And so I'm going to plot that point. I'm going to go ahead and put a dot there. And we can see that that point is the point. The x-coordinate is 0 because it's right on the y-axis. We didn't go left. We didn't go right. We just went straight up from the origin. So it's 0 and then 7. So in this case, h is 0 and k is 7. Now, one other thing I want to do is I want to answer the question in each one of these. I want to answer the question whether A is positive, negative, or 0, whether H is positive, negative, or 0, and whether K is positive, negative, or 0. And I'll explain A in just a minute, but we can see right here that H is 0 and K is positive 7. Therefore, if we were asked, is H positive, negative, or 0, we would say 0. If we were asked if K was positive, negative, or 0, we would say positive, okay? So then it says, well, what is the axis of symmetry? Well, like I said, the axis of symmetry is just simply x equals whatever h is, so x equals 0. The axis of symmetry is this, it's actually the y-axis, okay? It's the line that the vertical line that goes through the vertex, okay, which is the x-coordinate h, okay? So then what, does this open up or down? Well, you can see this one right here, B opens up. I call it up like a cup. And then I say down like a frown, okay? So this opens downward, okay? And because it opens downward, that means something very important, okay? So this opens down, okay? And because of that, A is negative. A is negative, okay? I'll explain that later. But what that means is that A is negative. It means that the quadratic, the x squared term, begins with a negative sign. It has a negative on it. So this is negative x squared and then some other stuff. And we won't talk about that right now, okay? All right, so this graph opens down and therefore A is negative. And now, what are the x-intercepts? Well, the x-intercepts, actually, this one it's hard to tell. So do you see how the x-intercept here does not go through a precise number? And so in this case, we're not going to be able to answer that question with just a graph. So we're going to skip that question, okay? But what is the y-intercept? Well, we said the y-intercept is where the graph crosses over the y-axis, which in this case is the vertex. And so the y-intercept is exactly the same thing as the vertex. It's 0, 7, okay? Now, it's important to understand that the y-intercept always begins with a 0. It always starts with a 0. It always has 0 as its x-coordinate, okay? And then lastly, we're going to say, well, does this have a maximum or a minimum? Well, here's the secret. When A is negative, it has a maximum. When A is positive, it has a minimum. So I'm going to put that down here. A is negative then it's going to be a maximum. If A is positive, then it has a minimum. A is never 0, by the way, not in a quadratic. Okay, so if it opens up, then it has a minimum because A is positive. If it opens down, then A is negative and it has a maximum. And you can see this is a high point right here. And the maximum is 7. It's the K. Okay, so the maximum and the minimum is always whatever K is. Okay, and so here we'll say that the maximum is 7. Okay, maximum is 7. And then the last question is, what is the range? And so the range, if there's a maximum, okay, then it's the max. If there's a maximum, then the range is going to start at negative infinity, and it's going to go up to whatever K is, and we're going to put a bracket, okay? So the range is parenthesis, negative infinity, up to 7, because that's what K is, and close it off, okay? We're done with A. Let's move on to B. All right, what is the vertex? Well, here it is right here. The vertex is at 0, or excuse me, it's 3. Sorry about that. It's 3, 0. X is 3, but it doesn't go up or down from the x-axis. It's right on the x-axis, and therefore it's 3, 0. And remember that this is H and this is K. So if we ask the question, well, is H positive, negative, or 0? Well, H is positive 3, so it's positive. K is 0, and so we'll say K is 0, okay? Okay, so what is the axis of symmetry? Well, that's easy. The axis of symmetry is x equals whatever H is. X equals 3, okay? Does it open up or down? It opens up, and because it opens up, A is positive, okay? And since A is positive, we know that this one is going to have a minimum, and the minimum point is 0. The lowest point is the K point. It's 0, but let's get to that in a minute. What are the x-intercepts? The x-intercepts are where the graph touches the x-axis. Well, look, it touches the x-axis right at the vertex. And so the x-intercept, there's only one x-intercept. There could be 2. There could be none. This one has 1. So the x-intercept is the point 3, 0, which is the vertex. Okay. What is the y-intercept? Well, if we go all the way up here, we can see that the graph crosses over the y-axis at 9. And so the y-intercept is 0. Remember, all y-intercepts start with 0, 0, 9. The y-intercept is 0, 9. Okay. And then we say, well, what is the maximum or minimum? Well, this one doesn't have a maximum because A is positive. It has a minimum. It has a low point. And the low point here, the K for the low point, which is the y-coordinate for the vertex, is 0. And therefore, the minimum, this one has a minimum at, of a minimum of 0. Okay, so the minimum is 0. And then the range. Now, the range for a minimum, I'm going to change this here. If it's a minimum, whoops, I need to undo that. I don't want to get rid of those words. I just want to get rid of the letters, or the purple. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. All right. So if there's a minimum, then the range starts at K and goes up to infinity. Starts at K and goes up to infinity. And so the range, in this case, bracket, starts at K, which is 0, and goes up to infinity. And there's all, we've just answered all of our questions for this graph. Now let's answer all the same questions for C, but we're going to go a little bit faster because I've already explained them all. What is the vertex? The vertex is right here at the turnaround point, and that looks like the point -3, +4, okay, -3, 4, and so H is negative and K is positive, okay? What is the axis of symmetry? Well, the axis of symmetry is at x equals -3 because it's whatever the h is. Okay. Does this open up or down? It opens down. And since it opens down, we know that A is negative. A is negative, so it opens down. Okay. All right. What are the x-intercepts? Well, the x-intercepts, we can see them clearly right here. The graph crosses over the x-axis at -5, and it crosses over the x-axis at -1. And therefore, the x-intercepts are -5, 0, and -1, 0. Okay. What is the y-intercept? Well, it looks like it crosses over the x-axis down here at -5, and so the y-intercept is 0, -5. Okay. Last couple here. What is the maximum or minimum? Well, since A is negative, okay, since A is negative, that means that this one has a maximum, and this is the maximum point, and it's the k value, which is 4. Okay, so the axis of symmetry is the h, is the x value of the vertex, and the maximum or minimum is the y value of the vertex. Okay, see, the vertex gives us lots of information. So this one has a maximum of 4, okay? And since this has a maximum, the range starts at -infinity and goes up to k, which is 4, and we put a bracket, and now we're all done. We've identified all of the qualities of A, B, of graph A, graph B, and graph C.